Welcome to another live episode. We are going to be talking all things beekeeping as we normally do. We're going to talk a little bit about the experimental yard, exciting things to come. My allergies are almost gone. That is also very big news to me. I always struggle with them for about 3 to 4 weeks, April to May. And I still got a little bit left. All right. Hey, Bradley White, man, I'm telling you what, you are like always just right there, man. Especially here lately, just like ready to comment. Hope you guys are doing good. It's just pouring cats and dogs out there. So had a little bit of a break today. I haven't done hardly any bee work. It's been nice yesterday. Whoo. It was a long day. I'd say 14 hours. Just myself and Laurel really did all right. Hershey, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, all of those places, North Carolina, from all over the place. We've already probably made more honey here the first week of May than we did all of last year. But this year's looking normal. It's not looking exceptional, but it's not looking bad. It's looking normal, and hopefully, that weather will continue to be that way. We can have a nice finish out to the season. Like to get somewhere around 15 to 20 drums of honey, and all that kind of stuff. South Carolina. All right. Hey, a small Canadian beekeeper. How's you guys thawing out up there? I know Ian's doing some stuff, mostly complaining, but maybe you're doing a little bit better. Watch Ian come on here in a second. Waxing 100 frames and building them. Whew, that's a job right there. Hey, thanks for the encouraging words, Cobra Strike. I really appreciate it. Watch out, or your bees will start drawing out that foundation you got on your face. Hey, look at all this right here. This is how busy I have been. I tell you, I don't usually grow a beard. One, because it's, as you can see, it's not really that thick, but also Laurel says no. And, I say yes, dear. And that seems so 10 years of marriage so far has worked pretty good with that. Um, hey, Kenneth Dutton, I hope you're doing good. And, yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers on here, and all that kind of stuff. So, is mustard seed plant good for pollen? Now, in my experience, it is. We have wild mustard that grows around here, and I don't know if you saw in some of my videos, I planted some mustard seed, and there's several different similar types of plants. There's wild mustard. There's what's called rape, canola, which is basically the same thing, but there's different types within that group, just like you have different types of tomatoes. And Brassica napus is one thing that I'm planting. I got a couple different varieties that I'm going to try to plant. And in my experience, the bees get good pollen, and they also get nectar from them as well. And I'm going to be planting a lot this fall, hopefully feeding the deer and feeding the bees in the spring. I wish I could get it to bloom in our really hot, brutal summers, but I don't think it'll do it and produce a good product for the bees. Did you recommend treating packaged bees? I do oxalic acid vapor about day 9 after package install. Yeah. So one of my friends purchased some treatment-free bees, and he did a shot of oxalic acid vapor 9 days after install and sent me the pictures on his sticky boards underneath. And I mean, there must have been 400 or 500 mites below each tray. That is way high for a package. When I've done some packages in the past, like when I did the package versus nuke challenge, I did those, and I was seeing like drops of 9, 12. The highest one had 17 mites, which is fairly normal for that many bees. But seeing hundreds on a package means your bees are already perforated. Estimated pounds of honey per your hive. Happy Mother's Day. Hey, I don't know exactly what it's going to be. If we get a lot of rain, then that's going to hurt. But oh goodness, I'm hoping on our honey production colonies that we can see an average of 100 pounds. But there's going to be a lot of colonies that aren't for honey production that we've been pulling nukes off of and making queens with and different things like that. And, we might only get 20 pounds or 30 pounds off of those. But I have about 90 colonies dedicated towards honey production. Would love to see an average around 100 pounds. And so far, if the weather continues, we might do that. We'll just have to see. Let's see. Is there a difference between queen cells at the bottom of the frame and the middle to the upper part of the frame? There, there is, and there isn't. So when the bees swarm or are going into swarm mode, if they're at the bottom or if they're at the center, at the top, it really doesn't matter. When they're in the swarm mode, they will put a cell anywhere and everywhere. And with supersedure, it's a little bit more clearly on the comb itself and not all at the bottom, but there will be a little bit of that too. I see swarm cells all the time right now, and basically wherever a queen can find a cup or cell of anywhere on the comb, she is going to lay an egg. And if they're in the swarm mode, they're going to draw that into a cell. They will put them anywhere. It's one of the reasons I don't like foundationless beekeeping. It can be done, but one of the cons to that is because they usually don't draw all the way up against the frame. They leave that gap so they can go in between. You literally have at least double the area to check for those swarm cells. Supersedures, though, and emergency cells are pretty much always on the combs and very rarely at the bottom. Oh, wow. I don't know if you all felt that, but I did. We have some major lightning going on right now over here, cleaning up the air. Hey, I want to say a big shout out to my brother, Ethan, the produce farmer. Thank you, Ethan, for the donation. You really shouldn't have. Now, I guess I'm going to have to get some honey to you, right? No, seriously, I appreciate that. Yeah. And if you see the little icon right there of my brother, the black cat, that's what a beard looks like. That's why I don't grow mine out. Ethan was able to grow a thicker beard than this at 15. He took all the grizzliness for himself, apparently. Dropping in to bring the hype. All right. Well, we got some hype now, folks. Hey, James McNally. Actually, I'm planning on having that grafting table in an upcoming video. So I'm sorry I haven't gotten back to you. I'm just really swamped and having a hard time getting back to everybody that is either asked a question, ordering, or attempting to order. And I really appreciate that grafting table. I look forward to using it in an upcoming video. Let's see. What do you think about the Apame hives? All right. Well, they work really good. But there's also the expense there. I think it's a personal decision. I think there's a lot of things in beekeeping that some things just are really not practical. And I don't see the Apame falling into that. They are expensive, but it's not exorbitant, I don't think, for what you get. When I look at the flow hives, I see that falling into that category. It doesn't mean that you can't buy them, of course. It's just you spend so much money and all you have is one box that, yes, it can pour honey out, but that's not enough. If you guys watched the video this morning, and I'm going to have a video on a honey production yard coming soon. And I mean, every colony in there is like 5 deep's worth of boxes. I can't do honey production with flow hives here. Maybe in other places, honey just comes in at a slow trickle or something like that. And you can just have a small little hive in the bottom and then one deep box on the top. If I want to get honey, I have like 6 weeks to get all the major honey that we're going to produce here. And so my colonies have to be massive. They have to have a lot of drawn comb above to bring in that thin nectar, to hydrate it down, and fill that up. And one flow hive box is not going to do that for me. And then you think about having 2 or 3 of those bad boys on one hive. I can't afford to do that. But with the Apame hive, it's compatible with wooden boxes. So you literally could have just the single at the bottom of the Apame that's insulated for winter, overwinter your bees in singles. And then as the season warms up, you could use wooden boxes on top of that, or however you wanted to configure that. I think there's pros and cons. I think they still fall into the practical category, but it's going to be kind of a more of a smaller genre because of the extra expense. Uh, I like wood hives a lot. Let's see. Came and you have to send your brother honey now. He just paid for shipping. Hey, my brother lives really close to me. He actually helped get my extraction room epoxied and stuff like that. He's bailed me out a lot. So yeah, he gets all the honey that he wants anyways. So he already knew he had honey on the way. He came and noticed some of my top feeders had some mold in the syrup. Will this hurt my bees? Um, if it's just a tiny bit, if it's just starting to form and the bees take it pretty quick, I don't see a big issue this time of the year, because if there is anything that's in there, the bees can get that out and they can, fly, take a dump. I definitely wouldn't feed any questionable syrup going into winter. But it might get so bad they won't take it. Right now, if I was going to use any essential oils, as far as like honeybee healthy, I would use it this time of the year because it doesn't cause robbing right now in my area, because we have flows going on. But I don't use that stuff as anyways. But I definitely wouldn't recommend using that in the summer dearths that we have, because it really incites robbing. I mean to tell you, there is so much rain coming down right now. I hope it doesn't beat up the tulip poplars. All right, all right. Yeah, big shout out to my brother Ethan. Thank you very much. Let's see here. Bella works. Yeah, I actually left a comment on Vino's video, and I just deleted it. It wasn't rude or anything, but basically I was commenting, and we see this a lot. I think there's different stages of denial in beekeeping. I know guys in Canada, and I'm not talking Ian, who overwinter bees, and they wrap them in a thing of tar paper and put like an insulated board underneath the lids, and they insulate the lids, they wrap them up, put them together, and they overwinter in Canada. He's talking about how brutal things are in New England, and I know you all get colder winters than we do, but having healthy bees is the most important thing. Bees are overwintering in trees in New England as well, and things like that. And not all trees are great. So I think Jim, and I mentioned this to him before, and I know other people have as well, in a kind way. But at some point, people got to figure things out for themselves. Now, the hive that he created looks kind of cool, and anyone that's watched my videos knows that I have no problem with the flow hive. As far as I think people should be able to make those things. I think it's cool to see different ways of beekeeping, but we've got to focus on the heart of the matter. And there is no beehive in the world that will keep an unhealthy hive alive and through winter. Healthy bees can overwinter in tires. I've seen it happen before. And they don't have insulation tires. They've got steel cables running through those things. And it's definitely not organic rubber. I can tell you that. Hey, beekeeping like a girl. Yeah, hey, 1-to-1. How's it going? But yeah, Jim's gonna figure it out. I went through stages like that, and and maybe he decides to figure it out and also use a different style of hive. That's okay. I just don't like the bashing of the Langstroth hive. There's a couple other guys on YouTube that do it as well, and the Langstroth hive has nothing to do with poor overwintering, because there are people that use it literally all over the world. Yeah, oxalic acid 7 days apart. That'll do it. Did any of you guys see the Randy Oliver post? And keep in mind, guys like Randy, they're still learning a lot of stuff too, on a much higher level than many of us. But it wasn't that long ago he was talking about oxalic acid vapor on his website, 5 rounds in 21 days. Now, what he just released in the American Bee Journal leads us to believe that you need to do it like every other day to get a good drop with oxalic acid vapor. So things are changing. We definitely have to be more smart how we take care of our bees and treatments, and also be skeptical, because a lot of what the scientists said 5 years ago, they are changing that now. And they're humans just like the rest of us. But going along those lines of scientists, I'm excited to say that I'm going to be getting some help from Dr. Humberto Boncristiani, that has the Inside the Hive TV and YouTube channel. If you haven't seen that, I would go to that. It's not getting in the hive, going through making splits, stuff like that, but it is cutting edge information on what they're learning when it comes to viruses and the mites, different things that they are researching, and he is researching to combat viruses and mites. And he's going to be helping us out with the experimental yard, and I'm very excited about that, because he brings a lot of experience as a researcher. And also he has I talked to him for 3 hours the other night, so he's got a lot of passion towards beekeepers. And he's not just a researcher, he's a beekeeper as well. Been beekeeping pretty much all of his life from the sound of it. And he's my kind of guy. So I'm excited, because we're going to be able to deliver this in a package that I think will touch on the academic side of things, and also the nuts and bolts side of beekeeping as well. Laurel, if you would, drop his link for Inside the Hive TV. I would recommend you guys subscribe to his channel. I watch his channel as much as anybody on YouTube. But oh, by the way, we are going to be expanding. It's like the college football playoffs, except better. And we're going to be expanding the experimental yard as far as test groups. We're going to go ahead and go to 5 test groups. That way we can include the control. I don't really like him having that, as far as knowing what we all know what's going to happen. But the bees are the same. As far as the queen genetics are the same. There's going to be a control group. There's going to be now a formic acid group, and we're going to be using Formic Pro. And I was able to talk the other day for about an hour with some of the guys there at Nod, or the folks that make Formic Pro. Learned a lot about the treatment. And so we're going to make sure we do everything the right way. Yeah. All right. So here's the link for Dr. Humberto's channel. Inside the Hive TV is a really great channel, and I look forward to seeing it continue. But so formic acid, we are going to do the Apagard thymol, the control group. We are going to do an oxalic acid group, and we are still deciding on the oxalic, the last 2, on kind of how we are going to go about what is most important. I really want to get one group that's a brood break. And honestly, we know we're learning more and more how weak oxalic acid vapor is. So I want to see how good is it if we do a brood break. A lot of people have been told and repeat, and I'm one of them, that in a brood break, it does really good. But if you'll notice, I always tell you that I treat 2 times in December with oxalic acid vapor. And I have the last few years, because the jury's still out, in my opinion, on oxalic acid vapor. And I know what the mites will do. So we just go ahead and do it twice when they're broodless. But will one shot during a broodless period give us 90% drop with oxalic acid vapor with 2 grams and 1 deep? So I think that's what we'll do with one of those groups, and then we'll have to see the next. But always, I really appreciated everyone who filled out the poll on that. Definitely a lot of encouragement there, and I'm excited for what's going to be happening soon. Hey, so we got Inside the Hive TV on here. That's fantastic. Humberto. So yeah, it was great talking to you the other night. I learned a lot about all the stuff that researchers have to do, and we're going to be doing some collaborations, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Castle Hives. Here's for a right leg clipped queen brood pattern. I tell you, I don't know how that queen's going. I have seen queens that had problems that weren't near as bad as that, and the bees just won't keep her around. So obviously she's got She's got some swagger, something about that queen. I tell you, I appreciate the donation to the experimental yard castle hives very much. Yeah, that was a crazy day in the bee yard, and Bob commented on that he had never seen a pollen basket quite like that, where it had two different shades. I mean, I've never seen that before. It was just a that hive has got some weird quirks. Yeah, Jerry Mosley. People have to blame something for their failures. Why not the Langstroth hive? And we're bad as humans sometimes at reinventing the wheel. I think yeah, if you really take a common sense approach, you just look around and see all the people who are being successful with it. And it's not like people use the Langstroth hive decades and decades ago and kept and keep using it because it's a terrible design. That doesn't mean it's the only design, but don't go playing the blame game in the wrong areas. Focus on Varroa, focus on nutrition, focus on queens. Um, those are the things that get us on a consistent basis. I can't ever once point to a Langstroth hive and say, "Oh my goodness, that one was too holy." Honestly, some of my best hives, and Bob has said this before as well, are some of the holy ones. I've got this running theory that if I run holy, shoddy equipment, that they're going to have my strongest hives in it, because every year I'm like, those boxes, those are the ones I'm going to cycle out this year, and every year those are the ones that have the biggest hives in it. So it's a big pain to haul those bees out and transfer them over. Sure enough, though, if it's in a new box, it's a week or a dead out. So I've told Laurel maybe we should just run holy equipment, and that way we'll always have healthy bees. Of course, tongue in cheek there. Let's see. So, how are we doing our record keeping? Well, we're still discussing a little bit on that, but primarily, um, we have, again, like I said, all of the bees are genetically from the same source, so there shouldn't be a lot of variables with hygienic behavior. We'll be having them numbered, and that will be coming soon, where I'm going to be showing you how we're going to separate these out, and they'll be in their numbered groups according to, and I will be letting you know when we number them. This group 0 through 10 is the oxalic acid brood break group, and then we will be monitoring. I like to get a alcohol wash here pretty soon, and that way we can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at, even in only about a month after install. So we can kind of see where we started at to a point, and then we'll keep that, and then we'll need to be putting that in um, onto paper and into charts. And honestly, we are still working on that. So whoa, it's not. For a second, I thought it was the lightning. It was Laurel. She's messing with me over here. But I will be letting you know more details as we figure it all out. We're still figuring out the last test group, but we should have it lined up here in the next week or two. It's very high on my priority list. Now that I've got the bees settled from swarming, we got a lot of our nucleus colonies sold. It'll help focus more on the experimental yard. Hey, Kamon, when catching swarms, how long do you wait to check for the queen? I usually throw them in there, throw some feed on them, and then I will come back, 10 days later, something like that. Sometimes that's not quite long enough if there's a virgin, so maybe wait 2 weeks. But just if you go in there, 10 days, just be very gentle, very light. A lot of times, a good virgin that's already been with the swarm, they get out there and they get busy, and they come back pretty quick. I think that's because they're pretty mature, though. And as opposed to a virgin that's just emerged, they've been out for a little while. So I think they're pretty quick about once they've set up in the hive, they just go out and mate and come back and start laying it up. It's a great time of the year for queens to come back. I've had really good success so far with queens coming back. Hey, Kamon, has your yards been super swarmy this season? Here in Kentucky, it has been nuts. Oh, we've dealt with a lot of swarming issues this year, but it's been a better honey year, so that's kind of par for the course. There's been a lot of good days to collect pollen. There's been a lot of good days to collect nectar, and they're just bringing it in so fast, even with the supers above. And a lot of it for us is just being able to keep up. But Yeah, I mean, we on those honey production colonies, especially until you get them settled in really good. Um, it's just you got to get in there almost every 5 days if they're really trying to swarm quite a bit. Any experience with using lactic acid? I have no experience with that. I'm not sure if it's legal or not in the United States in any form or fashion. I don't think that it is, but I could be wrong. But it's not a commonly used thing in the United States. Okay, I got to say a big thank you to, I believe that's, yeah, it is Kenneth Dutton, who is one of our biggest supporters of the experimental yard and just the YouTube channel in general. Kenneth, I really appreciate your just consistent efforts to help support all this. And I hope, you don't ask a lot of questions, though. We don't have a lot of dialogue. So you got to start talking a little bit more, Kenneth. I really appreciate it very much. I know Laurel does too. Let's see here. Hit me with a question if you have one. Okay, let's see. Yeah, would you try natural mite control like cedar? So I've had a lot of people ask about natural controls. Well, there's a lot of issues with that. First and foremost, um, the legalities of a lot of trying essential oils or cedar or different things like that. We can't be introducing cedar oil and different things like that without you know that's just not a legal way of doing things, and I don't want to be promoting that. Um, Also, the products that we have that are tested, they still have a lot of areas that need to be explored better, and that's kind of where I have a little issue with some YouTubers really promoting the foggers and the mineral oil or the throwing in the spearmint oil like it's supposed to be this magic silver bullet, when one, it's really not legal, and not just that, but the stuff that we have that is actually tougher and probably harder on the mites doesn't work good enough by itself a lot of times. And now you're using something that's probably not even as potent at killing mites, or maybe not even at all. And people are trusting that information off of YouTube, doing it, and then still having heavy losses. And we're not about that. We are all about keeping your bees alive. That's a lot more fun way to be a beekeeper. Kamon, have you heard of mixing oxalic acid glycerin with soaking sponges to treat mites? Any experience with it? Love the videos, by the way. Yes, I have. And actually, we're hoping that maybe we can get an EPA um, waiver on you being able to use that to try out. And I hope that we're going to be able to do that in the future. I would love to see that in our experimental yard next year and have a whole category of oxalic acid and a long-term either towel or sponge, kind of like what Randy's doing, or strips, something like that. I feel like oxalic acid and acids like that are probably the way forward, but we got to understand more mechanisms about them. We have to have not just me testing, but a lot of people testing, because there's a lot of variables. We're very humid here. Where Randy Oliver is, it's extremely dry. So, those environmental conditions can have effect on how damaging and effective these things are. Let's see here. Hey, Tyler, thank you so much. Whoa, it just jumped. What are your top 3 things for successful overwintering? Okay. So I want to go into a little bit more detail than that, because it'd be easy for me just to say my normal great queen's dead mites and good nutrition. But those really do cover all the bases. If you have your mite levels low, and they need to be low prior to your bees starting to create those winter bees. So for me, I want to get my mites cleaned up in August sometime. I want all September and October, and they brood a little bit in November here. I want all of that to just be clean, healthy bees. And we definitely don't want high elevated mite loads. They just ravage colonies. Not just the mites weaken them a lot, but then the viruses. And that's, if you watch Inside the Hive TV that Laurel linked above, he talks so much about these viruses, and they really are the X factor. They take a problem like Varroa and they just compound it so much. So the viruses, they're why your bees just are gone. If you ever have that issue, I mean, bees typically don't leave a hive. They just leave brood, leave honey, leave all that stuff, and leave nothing behind unless there's something crazy going on, overheating, viruses swarming, they leave some, bees behind. Anyways, so that's one thing. The queens is another one. I'd say outside of mites, that's our number two problem. That when we have some swarms this year, sometimes a queen doesn't come back, and that's a queenless colony. It's an issue. Then we have some queens that came out of winter. I probably had 2 or 3 colonies out of a few hundred that were drone layers, not completely. They were laying probably 70%, 60% workers, but they were running out of gas. And those aren't going to make production. So that's a big problem. And if the thing of it is they laid good enough going into winter to survive, but they'll never do anything. But what happens if you have that issue in August here? That's not going to overwinter good because they're not making that big population. You need a nice, productive queen, whether she's young, which typically is the nicest ones. A good, well-mated young queen, and with clean bees, she goes into winter and she just lays, and she lays more aggressively than those older queens and gets you those bigger clusters. And it might just be 1 or 2 extra frames a cluster, but that can make a big difference on how not only they survive, but how they thrive on those cool days where they're trying to rear brood in February here. And then nutrition. You've just got to have that to keep their immune levels up. And sometimes feeding pollen patties and definitely feeding the sugar syrup can really help. Definitely always like to see at least 3 deep frames of food in a colony that's a 10 frame size or bigger minimum, and just a little bit of that trickle feeding of that sugar syrup. It can be really thin. The bees noticeably do better, in my opinion. And it's a lot of people like, oh, the bees are having all these issues. It must be that we're feeding sugar because sugar is bad for humans. It must be the type of hives we're using. We're looking at everything except the mites and the viruses, I feel like. And also there's bacteria that could be involved as well. So hope that helps maybe answer your question just a little bit. Whew, all right. Hey, Laurel, can you give me some water? Hey, Brian Reese, I hope you're doing good there in Jersey. It was good to see a lot of those hives that we went through in that honey production yard are doing really good. I was able to get another round back through them. We were able to keep several of those colonies from swarming. And those queens that we introduced from Bob, they look like they're doing really good. I only had one out of the group not take, and I'll take that. But they're looking really good over there. I really appreciate you with all the help. The bees are filling up those supers. So yeah, I hope you're doing good there in Jersey. And Brian, man, I really appreciate you very much. You're way too generous. You guys never feel like you have to. I'm gonna do this. Whether you donate or not, I appreciate it so much. But just the guys that donate on a consistent basis, I don't know what to say really. It's so much, and just thank you. I guess that's all I can say. Laurel's not listening to me. Oh my goodness. Let's see. How does propolis impact viruses? They are transmitted from Varroa directly to the bee. Yeah, they are transmitted typically from Varroa, especially the deformed wing virus. Which, if you follow the Inside the Hive TV, he breaks down a lot about the viruses that we do know. Of course, he asks a lot of questions on there of could it be possibly this? Kind of gets the thought process going and all that kind of thing. I personally don't think propolis is a major contributor to controlling viruses. That's just an opinion. I have no clue, but it doesn't seem to be doing that great so far. I have a lot of propolis in my hives, quite a bit, and maybe it is helping a little bit, and we don't know. It would be interesting to see a study. Maybe there is one on hives that have high propolis versus none, or little propolis production, and see if there is actually virus protection to a degree. I have no. We have so much to learn in that area. I can't wait to learn more. I've been told in Kentucky it's best to overwinter in double deep's opinions. I get that a lot here as well. I overwintered a lot of singles this year, but I got to say that my best colonies were in double deeps as far as the strongest go. But you can overwinter in doubles. So this is what I'm thinking about doing this year. So it's basically a double, but not a double. The problem is you have to store equipment. You run them into the doubles into maybe in Kentucky or Tennessee until about I don't know, early October, and then you just pull that. You can take that top double, that second box, and you drop down all the brood below and food resources, and you put that down there, and then you basically condense the bees into that one box, so there it's a really efficient chamber. And I want to try that out. I overwinter singles here. It does good, but I do think doubles tend to facilitate stronger colonies. Ian, a lot of people are like, oh, Ian overwinters in singles, but I think, and I could be wrong, his colonies are very large. He doesn't have that long dearth period like I have, and I don't. He doesn't split late, at least not that I've ever seen. So he has these really big colonies, and he just condenses them down, and they go into winter really fast. And so it's pretty packed single. It's not like you're putting a four frame colony together and then trying to build it up to a single. It's really bigger than a single, just compact down. And then there's the older bees perish, but I don't fully understand what he does up there. But I like singles here. I'm leaning to try those more and more. Um, I think both of them can work pretty good. Hang on one second. Let me get on the horn here. Hey, Laurel. In there giggling with the kids. How about that water? Oh, she's talking to her mom on Mother's Day. I did it again. Hey, Melissa's Harvest. You just want to take this opportunity to say I don't like hive beetles. That is all. Carry on. I am right there with you, and I'm here to tell you all right now that somebody needs to invent a beetle game. You can play it on your phone, and it is like those old whack-a-mole games, but it's whack-a-beetle, and you have a hive tool, and you smash them. I'm totally ready to commit dollars to having a whack-a-beetle game on my cell phone. It is time. But if you can't whack a worker bee or a queen, or obviously if you whack the queen, you lose the game. You hit a bee, you lose points. And if you hit a little mite scurrying along, you get, bonus levels or something like that. There you go. Thanks, Melissa's Harvest, very much. Sorry about that little rabbit trail there. Yeah, I think a lot of old literature, we've got to be careful because it's like some people are ready to throw in like the Langstrauss, say Langstrauss, it's totally wrong. We shouldn't be doing this anymore, and that's too extreme. But at the same time, some of the old literature, I remember when I was getting into beekeeping, you could only overwinter double deeps here in Tennessee. Well, I'm here to tell you, I overwintered a lot of singles last year. They didn't come out as winter quite as big as my doubles typically, but they still made a colony big enough for honey production. They grew up and got to honey production size before honey production season got here. So there's still that. A lot of people told me you shouldn't ever feed pollen patties in Tennessee. The beetles will destroy the hive. Yeah, I don't do that either. There's a balance, but some literature is old fashioned and some of it is still relevant. So Bruce Brown, how do you like the hive lifter? So I've got a little bit to talk on that. Just one second. Woo. All right. Well, the hive lifter that I have has been neat. It wasn't quite what I was hoping. I'm going to have in a video before too long. And whenever I get a chance, it's just been stupid crazy. But the forks that I got on the hive lifter from Canada, I was not super thrilled. I'm not super thrilled with those. They just can't handle the type of weight I was hoping they'd be able to. And it's not that he told me what they could handle, and it's just basically it has to be some light two-way pallet singles. If they're both, if they're doubles, on a two-way pallet, the lifter just can't handle it. And also, the pallet wants to slide on the forks really bad. I don't really like the angle on it. I think the lifter though was made for picking up the handholds. It does a really good job with that. So I just think that it's not designed primarily as a pallet mover, and so I just don't see it working for me moving my hives around on the pallets. Maybe down the road we'll tweak it a little bit, but man, they slide off terribly. I have not enjoyed it as a even moving empty pallets around here. It's hard to keep them on the thing. Haven't been very happy with that. Now going to a hive and taking it kind of like Ian's where it picks up with the handholds. Now, when I do that, it's really good about locking in on those, and it's good about you've got to crack, of course, the box, and then it picks it up, and it does really good. The issue is here is there is no flat ground in this county, so um, anyways, that's kind of the update on the hive lifter. Not really what I was hoping. I'm going to have to upgrade to something that can move hives better. The guy in Hawaii, I'm like, buddy, man, I need you to build me one of those lifters. But he's got his plenty of stuff to do over there and on the Big Island. All right, where are we at? Brian reads, when you have three supers on and the lowest is 80% capped and the middle is 40 to 50% capped, would you add a fourth super to the top of the hive or under the lowest super? Well, I can tell you what my back will say about that, Brian. But let's say I'm going to go ahead and already be doing an inspection below, then I would add it below. And if you have, and again, this is something that I don't do. A lot of Ian doesn't do because you're just so busy. I mean, if you're not getting into the bottom, you just throw it on top. If I'm already getting into the hive and I've got the supers off, I'll add it onto the bottom. So that depends on that circumstance. But if you have the time, I think this also helps encourage the bees to start working that super faster. And so the answer first would be Brian Reese. Yes, I would add another medium to it. But take a frame that's already got a little bit of nectar and swap it and put it in that super. And they'll start committing to put nectar in there faster and working that super, making sure that they're getting that nectar out of the way of the brood nest. But yeah, I'd throw one on. Worst case scenario, they don't fill it up all the way and you only harvest a few out of the center. It's a whole lot better than missing or than plugging up the brood nest with honey. Hopefully this will be a good year and they'll fill that thing up really nice for you. Let me know what you end up doing, Brian, and then let me know what the results are of that, please. Because I'm always willing to learn something new. What can I do about a heavy double deep colony that is trying to swarm and not storing the nectar in the honey supers? Well, first of all, if they're trying to swarm and they've got cap cells, then I usually go ahead and pull the queen, especially it depends on what time of the year it is. But this time of the year for me, I have maybe a month of honey flow left. So if I go into a colony and they're dead set on swarming, I go ahead and make a split with her, just a small split, and take her out of the equation. And then I will crush the cells. And then since I raise my own queens, I mark it as a queenless hive, and I'll come back in later, crush the cells down in that single brood management again, and then drop one of my own mated queens or a queen cell. And that'll do two things. One, that'll make sure they don't swarm because they have no virgins to swarm with and they don't have the original mated queen. Obviously, you have to find the queen. You have to also destroy all the cells, but you get a full honey crop. And since they're queenless, there's not as much brood to take care of over that period, and they'll actually make quite a bit of honey because of that. Now, as far as getting them to work in the supers, if you have actual drawn combs up there, they should be going up there and fooling with it. I don't know why they wouldn't. Maybe you didn't get them on quite fast enough. I don't know. But if it's foundations, then that's a tricky situation. That is really hard when you have nothing but foundations. that's why it's best to like have all mediums or all deeps sometimes, because let's say that you have nothing but foundations and you have a double deep colony, and then you're putting on stacks of supers of foundations because that's all you have is foundation. If it's all deep boxes, then you can just pull up a frame of larvae up into there and they'll start drawing those out really good and start working that really fast. But if you have mediums, you can't do that. One of the things I've wondered though, and I have not seen this done, is what if you had mediums for your honey supers and double deeps for your brood nest, right? And I'll try to get this across pretty easily if I can. So what if you had two medium boxes, you remove one frame out of each medium, you take a frame of larvae and you stick that deep down where you've taken that one out of each one, which would, yes, you'll end up with probably a little bit of burr comb because it's not quite perfectly, the same as having a deep here and a medium here and a medium here. It's a little bit shorter, and obviously you have more wood with the mediums, but would that get them to start drawing out those four medium frames around that deep of larvae in that situation faster than just obviously throwing on foundations? Yes, you might have to come in there and scrape some burr comb off a little bit, but I think if you maybe came back a week or so later and you pulled that out and then maybe dropped it back below, that might work pretty good. Has anybody ever heard of that done? That would be interesting to see that tried. Sounds like a YouTube video. All right. Let's see here. Happy Mother's Day, Laurel. Thank you. Thank you. Hank. Yep. The kids made her cards and all kinds of stuff. And I went over and saw my mother today. Um, Unfortunately, she's not doing too good right now, but she did get to see some of her sons today, so that helped out maybe a little bit. I hope so. Yeah, well, usually when you pull the queen out of a honey production colony, they go into the hyper mode. Yeah, they do. Is hopefully they don't plug the brood nest, but I don't want to lose those swarms, especially right in the middle of honey production. Hey, Kamon, are you liking using medium supers for your honey production over the deeps? It's one of those things. Uh, yes and no. The medium's so much nicer to work with as far as the weight goes. Um, I had a bunch of mediums been sitting in my dad's shed for years. So I love the size of them and all that kind of stuff, but it is a pain sometimes it is a pain a lot of times to have multiple sized frames and stuff like that. And I'm still using some deeps for honey production because it happens. And so I'm going to have to still reset my Kamon a little bit or change the bars in it to where I can uncap both. But I don't see my business ever getting to the point of Bob's or Ian's. That's not one of my goals in life, is to have a lot of hired people and thousands of colonies. I would like to see it be in the hundreds. And, for me, I think the mediums are great. However, if we can figure out a nice lift that does a good job, and I'm willing to pay money, but if good money for a good lifter that will pick up deep supers, and if we get some nice equipment where it can handle those deeps efficiently and save my back, then yeah, well, we might go back to deeps because it's just way more efficient having the same size equipment, and it's cheaper to buy deeps over buying a bunch of mediums. Kamon, how do you guys handle all that honey? With my back. And Laurel picks up a decent bit too, but I try to take the majority of it because, any man that really loves his woman, wants to take care of her. So I end up breaking my back instead. But Laurel does a lot of lifting as well. But the kids are getting older, and I think the mediums will probably be what we will stay with, but definitely need to get a better moving system because we hopefully will have many, many tons of honey to move and lots of hand loading and unloading. And Big Red is a tall truck, and I am not the tallest guy in the world. So let's see here. get back to the questions. When storing dead outs, how do I keep wax moss out of them? Well, I find that I have great success overwintering dry combs and keeping them even in the summer. I have combs right now. I'd say 1,000 combs. Um, yeah, 700 at least that are just sitting in a shed right now, but they have no honey in them. They have no brood residues in them and no bee bread. And they're spaced. There's ventilation at the bottom, there's ventilation at the top. There is, you don't have a crowded frame, so there's air movement. I have very good success with that. Occasionally, I'll see a little bit of tunneling, but it's nothing that the bees can't fix. And that's all I do. Kamon, can the queen get through the queen excluder? She's not supposed to be able to, but I have had some queens that manage it, and I don't know if sometimes it has been where the queen excluder is got a little bit of a bend in the metal, and the queen somehow manages to find that one bend, and they'll get through. But I've had some queens in it. I can't tell that the queen excluder has got anything wrong with it, and they just keep slipping through it back to back. Out of using a couple hundred excluders, I'll always find a couple queens that do that to me every year, and it's just part of it. But most of the time, they cannot. They're not supposed to. It's supposed to keep them from going through. I know, Don. I've got to visit David up there at Good Job Bees and get him to build me one of those lifts. He's a really smart guy. He talking to him, he never acts like he knows anything, but he's really smart guy, able to build a lot of bee stuff, a lot of metal working skills, and yeah, he also is one of the sponsors for our test yard, so I'm really grateful for him for that as well. But I need him to be one of our sponsors for the new hive lifter for our channel. Kamon, do you like 3-day-old larvae for grafting queen cells, or how old? No, I like the larvae to be somewhere around 12 to 18 hours. You can go a little bit older than that, but I personally don't like to. I like to get the young larvae. Nothing over 24 hours old is what I've heard. I like to get it in no more than the 18-hour range. That's my opinion on that. Oh yeah, Don. If he said that he'd come up here and build me a lift, I mean, I'd pay for his plane ticket right now. I'm like, hey, buddy, we'll hook you up, man. That thing was really nice. Really, really nice. I want one. Laurel wants one, and so that means it needs to happen. But yeah, I'm going to go for the young larvae on that. It really makes a difference on quality of queens, in my opinion. Get the young stuff. Yeah. I was thinking of getting the 2-person manual box lifter. Ever try one? Not sure how much they can reliably hold when 2 people lift. I don't know. I've someone needs to do a YouTube video on that, or something. Do a review. There's so many products in beekeeping. We just have no clue how well they work. It's a little frustrating. Got lifts like Ian on the 2 new trucks on the farm came, and they are working good. Oh yeah? Well, send one my way. If you have 2, that obviously means that you are entitled, and we need to get that whole I don't need to get political here, but basically that whole mentality of if you have too much, then you need to be giving to the people who are less fortunate, Matthew. And I'm less fortunate, so send me one of those lifts. Just messing, of course. I don't believe that stuff. Oh, you got a Timber King sawmill. That's sweet. I've actually got to run some of those Timber King sawmills, and they are so fun. It's called hoarding. Ha, that is right. Oh my goodness. Hey, Kamon, great vids. I'll be getting my first 2 nukes in a couple weeks. Don't want to invest in a vaporizer for just 2 nukes. What would you recommend as a mite treatment as a beginner beekeeper? Oh man, what a good question. Kind of hard. So obviously, if they're nukes, they're going to have different stages of brood. So oxalic acid vapor isn't going to be a really great treatment unless you just consistently go to town. Hopefully they're pretty clean as they are anyways, but still it'll build up over time. Used to, I would have said if you're okay with synthetics, use Apivar because it was giving beekeepers really consistent results. It did not slow the brooding down, didn't seem to have any effect hardly on the colony at all, and really not, excuse me, the mites back. But um, Apivar is not something I trust at all now, and neither does Bob or many other beekeepers that I know. A lot of people are dropping Apivar um, like a brick. So that's kind of, if you do use that, and they say that some people are having still good results with it. So if you use it, whatever you use a follow-up test. You can use a sugar roller or something like that, sugar shake. I prefer the alcohol wash. Gives such a better picture of what's going on, I think. But something, even the sugar roll is better than nothing. Just make sure you do it right. Apagard thymol, once they're bigger, can work. Just follow the directions. And if you're in an area where the temperatures are within the instructions of the formic acid products, those can work pretty good. I have some friends that use it and like it, but it's very temperature sensitive. And you need to really follow the instructions. All of these things, the more natural the products are, the more you have to actually do your due diligence. And apparently now with the Apivar and stuff like that. So as you can see, it's complicated. This is the whole reason we're doing that test yard, is to try to uncomplicate this a little bit. It's really frustrating. If you make a split with them, um, and create a small little gap of a window, you can do that as well. But it's complicated. I think I would recommend Apagard thymol, but with it as well, follow up with a mite wash. I don't know where you live, so there might be beekeepers in your area that have a good recommendation. Just make sure that you're learning not from some dude at the bee club that says he's got experience. Make sure that he does. You need to learn from people who are successfully overwintering bees if you also want to successfully overwinter bees. And there's a lot of gurus in this world that buy bees every year. Some of them are on YouTube. Let's see here. So one of the things that I wanted to mention, Laurel, if you could get that other link to Nature's Image Farm. I want to say thank you to Nature's Image Farm. Greg Burns is a really nice guy. He helped me today find a bit for drilling holes in my lids. I'm going to start using a little bit more bucket feeders. I still like my frame feeders too, but the bucket feeders have some added features. So depending on the situation, kind of like what Bob does, sometimes I'll use a frame feeder, sometimes I'll use a bucket feeder. But Greg has donated all the buckets that we needed for the experimental yard. And I really appreciated that. So I want to leave his link below. He's got it. If you guys have seen the Bob Benny videos with those plugs, that's what I'm going to be using too. Greg sells those. And, usually you have to buy them in bulk, or you have to get them from an individual who sells them. And so Greg sells them, and you can order those plugs. He also sells the buckets and the hole cutting bit for making your own 1, 2, 3 gallon pails or whatever you want to do. And so that's, I ended up getting I got them for the experimental yard. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Greg at Nature's Image Farm. That link is now over there on the side. Yeah. So this fella says, he's in Northern California and he likes the formic acid, but you have to watch the temperatures. And that is the trick. And from what I've heard from Nod, which is the company that makes Mite Away Quick Strips and Formic Pro, is that it's most critical that the first 3 days, 3 or 4 days, are in that 85 or below temperature range, because most of your off-gassing happens in that period. They also told me that they prefer that you have, you can have a super on top. So like if you have a a double deep colony, throw a super on top, even if it just has foundation in it. They say that really helps circulate that through there, keep the entrance open, and just watch the temperature threshold. So we're going to have that in our test group. I'm excited to see how good that is going to work for us, and hopefully it will work good. So, and they Nod also donated the Formic Pro for the experimental yard. So I'd like to say thanks for them. These little things really add up um, quite a bit. So, we can focus more on investing into other areas. And I'm sure there's going to be some colony loss. So next year we'll restock whatever is lost. And that's going to be awesome. I'm excited. So yeah, East Coast prospecting, hasn't Apivar been out like 15 years? It has, and there's a lot of opinions on the Apivar. I can't tell you all the stuff that I have been told and who has told me this, and some people don't believe me, and that's fine. But I am going to tell you what I believe from what I know, and some of what I can't share is that it's not just resistance. There is isolated instances of Amitraz resistance out there, but there's also some data showing that it's working pretty good still. So there's some conflicting data on that. However, there's several people, and they're not just beekeepers like myself. Some of them are researchers saying that it is not knocking mites back like it used to. And there is some issues with the company as far as quality control and manufacturing. I've gotten a lot of blowback on this. People like, there's no way a big company like that would ever have issues like that. I'm like, that is baloney. Absolutely. There are humans running that company just like there's a human running his mouth here, and mistakes happen. And whether it's on purpose or not. And what do you think is going to happen if they make a mistake? Do you think they should? But do you think they're going to announce, well, we had the last million strips were a bad batch. We made a mistake and cost literally millions of dollars worth of bee loss in the United States and other countries. We're sorry. You know what's going to happen if they did? Lawsuits. So call me a conspiracy theorist, whatever. It used to be the most trusted treatment to use. And maybe it'll get back to that. I have no idea. But it's a synthetic. Amitraz does break down, but what does it break down into? I would really like to get off of the synthetic track, anyways. Let's figure out how to use these natural products better so it'll be cleaner for our beeswax and overall long term better for our bees. I think we're just going to have to do a little more research in this regard and maybe fine tune some things for our particular area. But yeah, ECP, Apivar is definitely suspect right now. I mean, we're talking operations like Bob Benny size. Bob has told me that he knows operations a lot bigger than him that are dropping Apivar. And we're talking tens of thousands of dollars worth of Apivar not being bought this year. I'm not buying any because it didn't work good for me last year. And I know another guy who runs about 500 colonies who's also not using it this year. Who's going to pay that much money for a strip that's not doing the job? Now, maybe things straighten out. But I think the takeaway from all of this, excuse me, is to monitor. Monitor, no matter what you use, formic acid, oxalic acid, Apivar. Use the treatment and then monitor, did it work? Because you never know. You might get that bad batch, and then your 10 colonies, your business like mine, tanks because you didn't doubt the manufacturer. Trust, but verify. All right. Oh boy, Michael. Yeah, follow up with that's what I had to do with my Apivar last year. Is I had to follow up with oxalic acid vapor and another round of thymol. Well, ECP, if you use those Apivar strips, do an alcohol wash afterwards or something like that and let me know. I wish I had the time to do a Apivar trial on YouTube and see if it works right. Maybe it will this batch. I know that the ones that I did alcohol washes on last year weren't promising, and I was not alone. Let's see here. Let's get off the. Well, and the one of the things about Amatraz that kind of makes it desirable is the fact that it's not like the other synthetics like Kumafos and fluvalinate. Those, Apistan and Checkmite, because those did not break down good. And they actually built up in wax really bad. And that's one of the reasons why they didn't kill mites for a very long period. Um, as long as Apivar has, or Amatraz, sorry, the active ingredient in Apivar, is because they built up levels into wax. And so the mites were getting exposed to sublethal levels. And then there could be other factors as well, but that's not good. But Amatraz breaks down, it oxidizes really fast. So if there's something wrong with the, how they're making these things and it's getting exposed to too much air or who knows what, I don't know. I really don't know. And honestly, I mean, as we're talking right now, can anyone out there give me another product that's a strip form? You drop it in, walk away, and doesn't really mess up your bees, and does the job or has in the past. I mean, there's not a lot of competition right now as far as a similar delivery. And anyways, let's get off of that a little bit. And any more bee questions? Is there a temperature range that mites thrive in as far as winter, summer? Are they worse in the hive in the winter, being forced to overwinter in a hive with the bees? Boy. So there's several variables here. If you live in a long season, obviously you're going to produce more mites because if your bees brood longer, that's how the mites reproduce. So that's why I treat a whole lot more in a season than Ian Stepler does and other guys further north. So you have to adjust your treatment protocol. There's guys that I know that treat 4 times a year, like guys in Hawaii, and they have to get good knockback. Some of them treat a little bit more than that because it's just every day more mites are being created in places like that. So there's the variables on the warm side. Even though you don't produce as much winters, mites in places that have shorter seasons up north, you have longer winters. And what are those mites doing all winter? They're hopping from bee to bee, eating the fat body. And that is what's keeping those winter bees all through the winter, is those fat reserves. And so it doesn't matter whether you live in the north or whether you live in the south, they really greatly impact overwintering survival and cluster size. So it doesn't really matter where you're at. You got to keep them low. Rule of thumb, it's going into winter, no more than 1% infestation rate. So if you did an alcohol wash with 300 bees in it, then you would see 3 mites in that. And that's 1%. And ideally, you would see less than that. But I wouldn't be comfortable seeing alcohol washes in September that were even that high because I know I'm still brooding. And in October/November, especially if I had Italians that brood longer and later, harder and all that stuff, they are probably going to be at 2 to 3% by the time they shut down, if they even shut down here. That's one of the reasons why I run carnies these days. They're not pure carnies, but they do have a lot of the carny characteristics, and we'd really try to select for those that give us an actual legit brood break in winter so we can really knock those mites back in winter with oxalic acid vapor or dribble. All right. Whoa, scroll down. Let's see. Hey, Evan, I haven't had a chance to watch that video by Randy Oliver. I'm sure that there's a lot of information in there that's probably worth watching. Let's see. Yeah, I like doing the oxalic acid twice in December too. It's such a cheap treatment And when they're broodless, just take advantage of it. Those broodless periods. If you see a colony in your bee yard, and let's say you get into it, and the new queens come back, supersede your swarm, whatever, and she's laying, and you see pearly white larvae in there, but none of it's capped yet. Go get that vaporizer and hit the colony. Take the time to do it. It's hard when you have hundreds of colonies to do that, but if you're just keeping them in your backyard, take the time and do that. It will give you a nice, wonderful kill, and it's just a nice opportunity. Whenever they're broodless like that, don't do it when there's a virgin running around in there because that could get her bald. But once the queen starts laying and she's been laying a few days, I oxalic acid vapor away. Let's see. Should you do a mite wash before you do a treatment? It really depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If you're wanting to really understand how much you knocked the mites back, like so, you treat blindly and then you come back later and you do an alcohol wash, but it knocked them back. You're like, all right, great, but where did you knock them back from? Were they already really low anyways? Um, it helps you kind of understand what you had and what you're getting out of your treatments. And again, that's one of the reasons I'm doing this experimental yard, because there's some treatments that I'm doing just like that, John, where I've talked about this a lot, and I make my splits up in a way that I can get that broodless period in summer. And then I hit them with oxalic acid and it gives me a nice kill. But what are the numbers? I do alcohol washes afterwards, down the road, but I never do any before and after. And that's one of the reasons this experimental yard is here, is I want to know exactly what I'm getting. And I know there's variables within that, but we've got to start dialing this in a little bit. Not only for my business, but my goal with the YouTube channel is to help other people experience success at whatever level they want. And in order to have consistency, we've got to have consistency with our controls, and that takes knowing what's going on and what we're getting out of what we're doing. So that's my main goal with the experimental yard. Is I really am not out there set to prove that this treatment's better than the other. I hope we can find multiple options. That would be wonderful. Maybe just understanding maybe mechanisms that make them more effective. But there's a lot to learn, and I like learning. Boredom is my greatest fear. I've said that many times. So just keeps me busy and all that kind of stuff. I have drawn supers. If a colony is strong, would it be okay to throw 3 on at once? It is actually. I do that a lot. So let's say your honey production. It helps to know when it's going to start. If you know about the time that it's going to start, throw them on right before. And maybe my only concern with that, Vanessa, is if you're looking at your weather forecast and you're up north, honey flow's fixing to start, and you throw all 3 of those on, and then you have a cold snap, and it drops it really back quite a bit. And if you see that kind of in your forecast, maybe you only put on 1 or 2, but then make sure you come back soon after that cold snap and throw them back on, or throw the rest of them on. Um, Last year, I actually threw on all my supers like I normally do. I've been doing it for years. Did it again this year. Worked great. But last year, I threw on the equivalent of about 5 mediums, 6 mediums equivalent on some of the colonies. And I mean, we just got the cold snap of cold snaps, and it stuck around for days. It was like a week long, just torched everything from black locust to tulip poplar. And I got into the colonies, and it set them back. It just stressed them out. And I wonder if I would have not put so many supers on early, if I would have waited, looked at the weather forecast and saw this year's going to be different, and only put on maybe 1 or 2, if I would have not had so much stress on the colony due to all the heat loss. I don't know. Just something to think about. As you can tell, I don't know everything. I'm trying to figure it out. Uh, do you think night temperatures will affect Formic Pro? I'm waiting, as it says, 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 Fahrenheit for daytime high, and it gets into the 40s at night. No listing on the label. Um, I don't. I think it'd be good to contact Nod about that. Tom, which was the guy I was talking to there, said that they're really good about getting back with people asking those kind of questions. I imagine though that that would be okay, um, because there's sometimes you just have those swings like that. But if I was using formic acid, if it's going to be in the 40s and it's not going to be that way too long. It's going to warm up pretty quick and get to those warmer temperatures as long as it's not staying down there for like a day or two. But again, I would check with the producers of formic acid and double check with them. It's a good question to know. I wish I'd have asked him that the other day when he was on the horn. Let's see here. Yeah. So Formic Pro. So okay, these guys, the B Man at Faith Apiary. So if it gets like, so if you're getting like 80 degrees, 83 degrees, but it's dropping down to like 45 degrees, then that is then don't use it. Because that's really to me super tricky. Extracting to do tomorrow. Oh my goodness, somebody has made some honey. Goodness gracious. Well, Bruce, thanks for coming on, all that stuff. Beekeeping, I mean, gambling is my addiction. Hey, we all know about that. But so Formic Pro, though, I mean, that's the thing here in Tennessee. It is so hard to find treatment periods. Okay. Low temp doesn't hurt, but it just doesn't work. That's the thing, though, with Formic Pro, is it, or any of those Formic products, is they're just so sensitive to temperatures. So it won't off gas at that temperature, but if you're leaving it on for the whole period and it gets that, like say 2 nights out of what's the 14 days, it wouldn't be good to do at all. You just wouldn't do it at all. Right. Too high of temperature. And that's the thing down here. We don't really run into the low temperatures too often. It just seems like it's really hard to find that nice sweet spot for formic acid in places where I live. That's one of the reasons why I haven't used it a lot in the past. Hey, Garrett B Company. Yeah, just to keep me I'll try to keep you posted on all that, and I really appreciate you donating again. Um, let's see. Well, I appreciate the encouragement too. It really matters a lot when people give me encouragement. I know that I'm not perfect, um, but I get, especially these days, bombarded a good bit with the negative comments and stuff like that. And so having guys like you and all of you all showing up and supporting verbally, even if that's it, I mean that is a huge thing to Laurel and I that keeps us going. Hope you're doing well, Garrett Beco, and you make lots of honey this year. AOG sheets to be cleared. I don't know exactly what that means. All right. Well, I'll look at the label, and I'm sure I'll be talking to Tom Nolan again there at Nod, and I'll ask him that about the cold temperatures. We were all talking about the warm temperatures because we rarely run into those cold temperature problems here. I hope you're doing good up there. That B Man at Faith Apiaries, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because I definitely have about this much experience with formic acid. Okay. So I have 12 hives I need to relocate due to land sale. How do you go about finding new bee yards? Well, first of all, running your mouth. It's a fantastic way to meet new people. It's a great way to put people off too. It just depends on the person, right? But seriously, that is how I've gotten most of my bee yards. Socially, I get out a lot, even though I was homeschooled. I'm pretty social. Farmers, I don't know if you're in a rural area, but I talk to farmers. I like to see what they think, what's going on. Farmers co-ops. I like farmers for so many reasons. They're used to pain. They're used to livestock. They don't complain typically as much as sorry, people that live in the city and don't understand the outdoors as much. I'm not saying all the people are like that in the city, but you have a higher percentage of people that don't even know how to raise a chicken. Okay. So I love sticking them on farmers' lands. They usually have the land required as well. That's the first place I always look. And they're more forgiving. I've had a couple of my folks that are farmers that have gotten stung from my bees, and they just like, yeah, just make sure you tell them bees to settle on down, that kind of stuff. And I make sure I mow around the hive so they don't have to get close or anything. But that's where I would start. Um, make connections. I also, and this helps a lot too. But I say most of the farmers just say, hey, put bees on there, just take care of the area. That most of them are just, they love to see young people or anybody actually doing some work and engaging in outdoor stuff. Most of them are really acceptable of that stuff, but I always give them a good bit of honey. I give 2 gallons at least to each of my bee yard owners, and they're thrilled with that. I also offer them money because some people might like the money instead. No one has ever accepted the money. They always go for the honey. Go figure. Can you explain how to use single brood management and not have swarming? We do 8 frames, which doesn't help in Middle Tennessee. Well, if I had 8 frames, I would think you need to rotate some drawn combs down in there. Then it makes it a little bit trickier. The 10 frame works really good once they've committed to it. However, you're still going to get some swarming. So like Laurel and I just went through a yard of 30 honey production colonies. And the week before, it's probably been about 10 days or so now, we went through and we dropped them all down into single brood management. So it was probably about the 3rd week of April, something like that. And we took all of the frames that were, excess pollen. A lot of colonies have excess pollen right now in Tennessee, the big ones. So we take those out. We can give them to splits. They'll really benefit from that. And then we have drawn combs of deeps. So we can drop those in there. Bam. Instant laying room for that queen. That really helps. But still, even with doing that, pulling the honey out of the bottom box, only putting the brood down in there. And if we have extra brood, because we'll drop 1 or maybe 2 drawn combs down in there just to kind of make it easy. And then we'll take the honey frames out. We won't take all of the pollen out, but we'll take the frames that are mostly covered with it. And then if we have extra brood, then we're going to take the youngest and take that out and give it to a young colony that can cover it and protect it. Or maybe make a small split. When I say take a frame of those eggs out, we'll take the bees with it. And that way they can warm that up. And when we give it to that other colony, it's not like that other colony that's small has to manage what they have and then that too. So then they've pretty much set up with a nice environment down in there. You've got the drawn combs up above, and it works really good like that. But that doesn't eliminate swarming just like that. We come back less than a week later, and we go down into that single brood chamber, and we check to see if there's swarm cells down in there. And I really feel like giving him that secondary check, it takes a lot of work, but it works for me. I go down there, and if there's any cells, we have to go through and smash them. And they can't be capped. We got to get to them before they cap any of them. But if we do that, and they, by and large, by the next week, they have locked in. And now we're around 1st week of May. They're locked in. I'm not worried about that yard. I might get a swarm leave from those production colonies, but I don't think so. Once you get them to a certain point and they focused on bringing in that honey crop, they do a good job. With your 8-frame situation, you might need to come back in another week or so and rotate another drawn comb if you have that. I know that some people don't have the drawn combs, and I've been there. Most of my beekeeping, I have been there. But that's why, don't listen to these guys that tell you every 2 to 3 years you got to cycle out your combs. They can last longer than that. It's so valuable, and always try to draw combs out when you can. Those combs are so valuable. Hey, Ian, how close are you to pulling off your honey? How's the flow shaping up? Hey, good to see you. Hope you're doing good up there. Please stop sending any cold weather down. But no, we're doing good. The honey flow so far is looking normal. I hate even saying that word because there's no such thing really as normal in this industry I'm learning. But so far so good, looking good. We're gonna be pulling. We've already made more honey at this point than we did last year, so that's exciting. And the bees look really good. If we can get the weather forecast looks pretty good, but it's been cooler. We haven't been getting a lot of 80-degree days. I mean, last year, the year before last, we had days in March is like 84 degrees. We maybe have had 2 days in the 80s, I think, so far. So that's not normal for us. I think that may be slightly affecting the greatness of what I like to see. I don't know. I would love to see a lot of nectar coming in the next week or two. But if things shape up good over the next 4 to 5 weeks, and we get some nice sunny days, we might make some really good honey. So I'm excited with what I'm seeing. You know how it goes. It can go either way. Weather can change pretty quick, but it's doing much better than last year. Thanks for asking. Hope things are doing good for you up there. We'll probably be pulling honey to extract in a month and a half. Hey, my brother's still on here, the produce farmer. All right. Let's see. I missed something up here I wanted to get to. Edward Frill. Hey, Ed. I'd like to say a special thank you to Ed Frill. He's probably not expecting it, but maybe he doesn't want it. But Ed has really helped me with some of the experimental yard. He actually, with all the people that sponsored the experimental yard, as far as our big sponsors at the front of the video, I did not cold call anybody, which I'm very thankful for because I'm not very good at that. It's like, hey, you wanna donate to our YouTube channel? We're trying to do good work. Click hello. No, so I'm not really good at that kind of thing. But Ed actually put me into contact with a couple of these people, and he encouraged them to donate. So Ed really helped make the experimental yard as grand as it is. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Ed for putting those people into my path so that we could make this a reality. So thank you very much, Ed. Hope you're doing good up there in Ohio. Let's see. Gavin McCandles. Thank you very much, Gavin. Let's see here. Feel free to ask some questions. What about neighbors who use weed killers? Oh no, we're gonna go into that. Okay, I promise I'll be short and sweet, or at least short, anyways. So, with if it's pesticides, that's rough. It's really rough, but weed killers not so bad. Your bees are foraging on so many different things, and there's a good chance that they're not going to be foraging on what they're spraying. Now, is there a little contamination? Maybe. And I would prefer people not use so many sprays. I do. But so many people on Facebook, especially, or Bee Source, get on their high horse about, oh my goodness, somebody sprayed their fence row or somebody sprayed dandelions in their yard. And now that I'm a beekeeper, you've assaulted me. It's ridiculous. It's all of a sudden we become beekeepers and we own the whole countryside. Especially annoys me when I see beekeepers get on their high horse about, oh, this farmer's spraying. The farmer's been, working there for 40 years, But now that I've been keeping bees for 4 months, he's got to go, or he's got to change his whole lifestyle practices. Again, I am not for sprays. I don't like chemicals. I like organic gardening, all that stuff, but there has got to be a healthy balance to this. Herbicides, by and large, unless the bees are foraging on it while it's being sprayed, I don't think have much of an effect. Now, there has been some research showing, oh my goodness, Roundup is really damaging to the bee. But that in that research study that a lot of people point to, they literally fed Roundup to the bee. Roundup, and I have used it one time. It kills the plants so fast. The bees can tell it. They can tell the plants weakened. They literally pick flowers. You see them buzzing around and you see them how they miss some of the flowers. They don't go to this one. They don't go to that one. They go to these particular ones. That's because they can pick up on electrical charges by the plant and the flower. And so they can it makes it more efficient for them to know which flowers are more capable of producing pollen or nectar. Plants that have been sprayed wither very quickly. So I personally don't think herbicide, as far as getting into the hive and contaminating the hive, is that big of an issue as many people make it out to be. However, I do think it is a big contributor over the course of the whole country for affecting lack of habitat, lack of food. That is a problem. And the only way we're going to be able to combat that is through education to the masses. And the best way to do that is to learn how to take care of your mites, keep your bees healthy, great queen's dead mites and good nutrition, and produce honey, and then sell it. And people are going to eat it and love it. And then they're going to wonder what they can do to help out. That's part of the reason why I want to see so many people become successful beekeepers at the hobby level, sideline, or whatever, because the more people are promoting that real stuff locally and people are seeing it on those shelves, the more that message is spread and we get less of those sprays sprayed. But there's got to be a balance to this as well. That's just my opinion on it. I know a lot of people don't agree with me on the whole herbicide thing, and I'm fine with that. But that's how I feel about it. Yeah, pesticides, there's a big difference in the types of sprays. Oh, I missed something there. Jim Ladd, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate your donation to the experimental yard. And if you have any questions, leave them below. Well, and here's one of the problems with banning things. And it's not like I'm a big fan of Monsanto or Bayer or any of those guys, but some of these sprays that we have now are actually safer than the alternatives we had in the past. And what I would love to see is some companies come out. I know it's so hard to get ahead in those kind of industries because companies probably like Bayer, Monsanto make it the regulatory process so hard. But I would love to see some natural products come out that could control weeds. And I know that Gardens Alive has some natural iron products. I wonder if anybody here has tested those. I haven't. I would love to have the time to do that. But they're supposed to kill some weeds, but not have the residues and all that stuff. Let's see here. Let's see. Heavy rains in Kentucky tonight. Oh man, I don't know how many inches we've had here, Houston. It's been nice though. Besides this live chat and prepping some hives for a little bit of wind, I did have to do a little bit of work this morning, late, but you haven't had to really do anything. Kind of relaxed today. Took a day off. Corbin. Oh man, I used to deliver up there in Corbin, Kentucky. Bunch of crazy people around those Dollar Generals in Corbin, Kentucky. 2 Celsius nights in Eastern Ontario. Brr. Oh my goodness. Jared LeDuc, how do we go about buying queens from you? And I wish I could tell you that, hey, I have some right now. But we just can't keep up with all the orders. We can't keep up with all the emails that we get. I can't keep up with all the questions on the sidebar either. And, I could basically, I don't even think if I just focused on queens and nothing else, I could supply all the queens that I could sell right now. And it's super frustrating, let me tell you. I've got to raise hundreds of queens just for my operation. Then we've got to raise queens for the nukes that we have sold. We're producing honey, trying to produce videos, got this experimental yard going on, and it's just Laurel and I. That is one of the reasons why it is really hard for us to be able to just say, we can't have a website and just say, hey, there's queens available, and people just say, I'd like to buy a queen. It takes crews of beekeepers, and that's why I would be very skeptical. Some of these YouTubers that have their videos and talk about their packages and their queens and stuff like that, but you never see their employees, you never see them make them. And they have queens and packages available all spring long, and even queens in summer and fall. How do they do that? A little fishy. It takes a ton of work and time to do that. So that's why I can't easily get queens to you. I hope to change that in the future, but we're going to have to get some employees in the future in order to make that possible. That's all there is to it. Hey, Carter T, thank you so much again for donating to our channel. I hope you're doing well wherever you're at. I can't remember which state you're in, but really appreciate your donation to the experimental yard. So Brian Reese, natural weed killer, 1 gallon of white, 2 cups Epsom salt, table salt, Dawn dish liquid. So what's the white part? 1 gallon of like white vinegar, or what's the white about? Or is it white 2 cups Epsom salt? I know there's Epsom salts. Maybe you could clarify. See, I would love to see some stuff like that. Let's see here. Virginia Plan B. Hey guys, I've actually seen a couple of y'all's videos. Hopefully, you guys are doing good up there in Virginia. Having a good time, it seems. Hope your bees do well. When my bees swarm, they seem to go feral. Is that not what you call it? No, I wouldn't call it that. You know, some bees can get more aggressive when they're going through a queenless period. And if they don't have a queen in there, or there's a virgin running around, certain things can take a hive that's been pretty easy to get along with and make them aggressive. You get a good laying queen in there, or if you get a new queen in there and she's been mating with some mating with some drones that are pretty hot natured, then things can change pretty quick. Okay, yeah, white vinegar. Okay, that's kind of where I thought you were going with that, Brian. Maybe I can try that out sometime. I can't even hardly garden right now. It's really sad. I've got like 108 bulbs of garlic, and that's pretty much my garden right now. All right, yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in January at the conference for sure. Um, I'm super excited. I'm talking to some other guys that might be able to make an appearance. So far, we got Randy McCaffrey, Frederick Dunn as people that are going to be people of interest there. And Randy's threatening to bring Mr. Ed with him. I don't know if I should have let both of them come to the conference. I really don't want the building to burn down and I have to pay for the insurance and all that stuff. But yeah, there's going to be some good speakers. Should be a whole lot more vendors, and we're going to try to leverage some good deals for the beekeepers there. So I'm hoping this. We actually had some of this last year, and it all depends on what your needs are. But I'm hoping that I can get some good deals that pay for at least a good part of your trip down. I had one guy that lived in Tennessee, so we don't have far to go. But he said all the stuff that he bought, since he was able to get the 10% discount and save on shipping, about equaled out paying for it anyways. For the conference. So I would like to be able to see if I could get some good prices on subs and other types of equipment there as well, and some discounts, and have a lot more vendors available. Hey, Cam, I just want to tell you thank you and that you're awesome. Oh, thank you. You have made me an exceptional beekeeper. Unfortunately for me, I somehow developed a severe allergy to bee stings. Oh no! I had a buddy that happened to in Wisconsin, and there's a couple guys that I know that have gone through bee sting therapy, and I have heard that it has a pretty high success rate. Now, I don't know how much it costs, but I hate to hear that, and that can happen. It's really weird how that works. There are some people who start off with severe allergies and they get tolerant over time, and some people that start off with little to no allergies and they actually get more allergic over time. And there are some beekeepers that I've heard of that have kept bees for 20 or 30 years, and in their um, later years in life just developed a terrible allergy to it. So that is one of the reasons why we don't keep an EpiPen around here, because they're price gougers, but we do keep epinephrine around here. And we recommend that you do, even if it's not for, you're not too concerned about yourself. You just never know when the neighbor's idiot kid, excuse me, will come over and start throwing rocks at a beehive or something like that. So Stephen R, the conference, I've got a conference that I've got put on. It's January 7th and 8th. We don't have signups available yet, but I've got Ian Stepler flying down as long as the Canadian border is open. So hopefully things will clear up and everything can be somewhat normal. And definitely at our conference, things are going to be normal there if I have anything to say about it and everything can be done. But you have Ian Stepler, Bob Benny's going to be a speaker as well. Excuse me. Frederick Dunn, maybe Mr. Ed, Rainey McCaffrey. We're going to try to have several other people. I mean, these are just some of the bigger names. There is a ton of people that are on over here. Vendors like Hat Bee Acres planning to be there and have their products available. Hillco, which is one of our sponsors. So we plan to have, there's going to be several more speakers too. I've got Greg Rogers, runs a wonderful operation, like 400 hives. So it's more around my size. I'm looking forward to learning from him because, I love what Bob does and what Ian does, but, they run a very high colony count. I'm looking for something like, Greg Rogers, and I learned from them. Don't get me wrong, but Greg Rogers runs more of a similar operation, but he's been doing it longer than I've been alive. So I want to learn from guys like that have kind of a similar operation. I think most of you who think about maybe doing a business, you're thinking about probably, a few hundred colonies. You're probably not thinking thousands and running crews of beekeepers. So he'll be there. But yeah, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. And I'm hoping to turn it into a trade show. I'm having a hard time getting some of these vendors to commit, and they can back out later. If things get crazy again and they want to back out, they can, but everyone's really reluctant to commit to anything right now. Not everybody. There's some of them that like, bring it on, and I love them. But hoping to get a lot of vendors there so we can see cool stuff like license pumps and data and stuff. And Hillco's got some cool stuff. Happy Acres, a lot of these guys. I want Premier Foundation. I want to have it all there that I can. Shoot, we're talking about maybe having a guy in Canada come on down if the borders open as far as a vendor. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. Yeah, Apame it plans to be there as well. They had a small booth last year, but plan to have even more last time. So it's really cool to see the Apame stuff in person. And if you haven't seen the pollen trap, those are pretty sweet. Natalie at Beekeeping Like a Girl just did a video on the pollen trap we have here, and I love collecting pollen. You can take your own pollen, take your own honey, make real healthy pollen patties, and that's what I use to feed the queen rearing colonies that we have. Because when it comes to our queens, you cannot have enough of the best nutrition. What do you do with old bee boxes that had American foul brood in them? Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what I do with those: gasoline and a lighter. American foul brood is Now, there's a big difference between an American foul brood. Now, legally, I have to burn them in this state. Maybe other states are different. Hi-Fi and I have been talking about wax dipping, eliminating these spores. However, if it's a European foul brood, you don't have to worry about uh, I reuse equipment. I use combs from European foul brood. Some people don't say that you should. I do it anyways. Um, a round table with Ed, Bob, and myself. That would be interesting. Definitely interesting personalities at that table right there. No, no, I did not see that. Um, hey, Nuts and Bolts Beekeeping, let me know what you think of the boxes from Hilco. I like them. I liked them better than the Man Lake boxes for sure. Let's see. I still don't see it. Yeah, Hilco plans to be there at the conference, Don. I went through a year with venom therapy. I'm no longer allergic. Melissa's harvest. It would be interesting to maybe one of these days I can have the time to interview someone like you at Melissa's harvest to talk about your experience with that. I wonder if people would find that beneficial. What do you know about treating hives with eco wood treatment? So I actually purchased some, and I would like to dip some boxes in it and have that part of the videos. All that know is what I've heard, and I've heard that it's better than nothing, but it's not near as good as a good paint job or wax dipping. And woodenware has never been this expensive. So, in my opinion, do what you can to protect that equipment. Go above and beyond. A well painted box can last 20 years, especially if it's maintained. Seal it good, roll it in there, tops and bottoms, prime and paint it, 2 coats. And it's a lot of work, but these days I like to overkill. Of course, I can wax dip, which covers a multitude of sins, but Jared Leduc, how does Laurel hold the camera so still? First couple of videos, I thought I was on a tripod until you made her giggle. She's incredible. She's gotten really good at that. I think both of us have gotten a little bit better than when we started, but it takes a whole lot of work for her to be able to do that. Her arms, sometimes, especially when I get long winded or I've made 20 takes because I have an off day, she, her arms are like, my arms are falling asleep. Can you get it right this time, please? Let's see. Camus says he'll buy me a gimbal one of these days. Man, Laurel putting the pressure on yet again. Laurel for the win. Laurel's subtly way of not being so subtle of Cayman, it's time to get a gimbal. I'm working on it. Next Mother's Day. You're not my mother. You're my wife. I get my mom a gimbal, but she won't use it. Okay. Let's see here. Ian just released a video just a few minutes ago. Okay. Yeah, but James McNally, yeah, I'm planning on trying that Queen Grafting uh, unit real soon. I appreciate you sending that to me all the way from Canada. I haven't got to use it yet, but we've been busy, like I said, with honey production. But I will say, as a carpenter myself, and years ago when I was helping my grandpa, I used to dabble in it quite a bit, and everything's cut really nice. And I really appreciate the attention to detail. You sanded like everything on that; it's really nice and smooth. So I appreciate all the hard work into that. Hey, Ricky Rourke. Thanks for your hard work to make a difference for beekeepers. Hey, no problem. It's my pleasure. I hope you're doing good over there on the east side of the country. Speaking of which, I've got a video that will be coming up soon on the horizontal hive. They are attempting to swarm, and they're not going to get away with it. If I have anything to say about it, but it's going to be interesting to see, and I hope that we have a nice follow up video long term on some honey we're pulling out of there. So Ricky makes those horizontal made the horizontal hive that I have, and it's nice. I'm enjoying it. You know, we were talking about this earlier about different types of boxes and whatnot because we brought up Vino Farms and how he's kind of shooting down the Langstroth system and saying that it won't work in New England. I disagree with that. Now, can you do other things? Sure. And the hive that he's built looks pretty cool. Not super practical for large scale, but that doesn't matter. I just don't like that you have to shoot down Langstroth boxes. They work good. Are they the best in the world? I wouldn't say that either, but they definitely work. They definitely work. And if your bees can't survive New England and Langstroth, then I would argue that you're doing something wrong. When do you plan to have the conference tickets to go on sale? Or when do you have the tickets available for the conference or whatever? Um, as soon as I get a spare moment, we've got to rig it up differently last year. It was than last year. It was terrible as far as we were doing everything by hand. People would enter it in, but some people were entering it in because we didn't have a follow-up email that instantly shot back. Some people literally, most people did not. But there were several people, at least 20, that resent it in and resent it in and resent it in. And it was just a nightmare. We had like one guy that sent it in like 16 times because we didn't have it where you sent it in and then there was an email that confirmed your spot. And so people were concerned that they weren't getting a location because it was filling up faster. Than a donut shop after, they put a sale and the cops, never mind. I'm not going to go down that road. I can't even get the joke right whenever I say it anyways. But we're going to have to change some things. We're looking at summer, definitely looking around summertime. And I'm going to have to hire somebody to help me with that. Yeah, looks like a isolated lay-ins, laying hybrid, all that kind of stuff, but you got keep in mind, and this applies to me as well. I really try not to do this, but if you're going to be successful at YouTube, you've got to be good at doing what's going to get you the clicks. And I haven't had any viral videos, and I think probably if I shot a little bit more for clickbait or shooting down Langstroth beekeeping stuff that was more controversial, I probably could get more subscribers and a little bit more clicks, but that's not what this channel is about. This channel is about combating the incorrect information out there, giving people options, trying to do some reviews on stuff and showing what is working for us and what's not working for us, and showing you how we're trying to figure things out and hopefully help more than anything. And a lot of work around here. So definitely YouTube rewards those who don't go down that path and focus on the clickbait and stuff like that, and that's fine. I'm very happy with what we're doing and look forward to doing better. But I think you got to consider the producers like John or Jim Vino. Um, with he kind of has that pouty face on the front of his videos sometimes, and it's all about getting those clicks, man. That's how you make the money. Let's see. Hello, it's funny how you pronounce his last name Lyson. Well, see, that's the thing here. We say things differently, like the apame, from what I understand, is actually the apami, where it is originally from. And if I'm correct, B Lord, Lyson is actually Leeson. Is that correct? Saying it that way? And then I hear max or formic acid can taint the flavor of honey when applied. Your thoughts? I've never used it with honey supers on, but I know a lot of people who have. I mean, I've never heard that from the guys who use it. These guys are organic certified, and they produce a lot of honey, and they produce like gourmet level honey too. I don't think they would be using it if it messed with the flavor of the honey at all. So I think that's probably not the case. Let's see here. Yeah, making your boxes is a good way to do things. But yeah, I'm hoping to have Lyson at at the conference. At least some of their products. I like to have several of their products available. That pump that Byron had in one of my videos. Oh, I love that. I don't have a pump that nice. It's so easy to clean. It pumps honey and syrup so fast. It you can adjust it. Oh, it is such a it's a machine designed to help beekeepers. Oh my goodness. I don't see Data and Man Lake doing a lot of that. It's really frustrating. And I'm looking at Leeson and these other companies that are out of the country, and they seem to me more geared towards producing products that help the beekeeping industry. If Man Lake or Dayton's watching this, I'd appreciate it if you do a little bit more of that. Well, whew, I have my voice. I'm losing it, folks. I told Laurel I try to keep this one around an hour. Here we are pushing the 2 hour mark. Um, we will have an experimental yard coming soon, a video. It's going to be getting to the hives. We are going to be showing you how we're building them up. We're going to be laying out exactly what's going on for those of you who didn't see it early on. We are going to be doing 5 groups now. Same amount of colonies, 52. So you can't have an even number there. But I think the 2 extra colonies we will use just in case we have a couple colonies that maybe go queenless that might affect the mite loads in that particular test group. So we can kind of substitute those into those. Maybe if we have 2 go queenless or something weird happens or we let one swarm, oops, we better not do that. But we'll have 5 groups, one for Formic Pro. So we'll be doing a formic acid group. So thanks to everyone who's filled out the poll. I think we're not going to do HopGuard 3 this year. I just feel like it has done a really poor job in the past. So I'm least motivated to do that. It's also messy and a pain to use. More people were interested in the formic in the poll, but that doesn't mean we won't try HopGuard 3 in the future. There's always next year. That's at least I hope so. And then we'll totally be doing the Apigard Thymol, one control group. So those of you who are pulling for the control group, we're going to have that. And I've also got Dr. Humberto Boncristiani helping me with it. So he's a bee researcher. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go and subscribe to Inside the Hive TV. He's got some really good videos. It's mainly focused on bee pests, viruses, mites, really detailed stuff. Not so much getting into the hives and fooling with the bees, but what is causing bee problems. Really good stuff. I watch a lot of his videos because it's worth watching. And it's a whole lot better than having to read a piece of paper of technical data. And it's all, it's just so boring. He basically takes that kind of stuff and then he puts it in a video form and really condenses it down in a way that you can get the nuts and bolts of the information without having to read a bunch of papers. So check out InsideTheHiveTV.com. And I'm very grateful that he's going to be helping me because he's got the experience to actually make up in areas that I don't have the experience. And it'll help keep me accountable and the test accountable as well. And hopefully make it a lot more beneficial for you and I. So I'm excited. Thank you all so much for coming on tonight. Thank you so much for your supporting of our YouTube channel in every way that you have. We will see you soon in the videos, and God bless you all.